I'm really trying to free my body, free my form. It's like I have to turn to I have to turn to the outside world to decide how I'm going to feel about myself.
Mm.
Instead, I want to be able to look within myself and say, that's where how do I look versus how do I feel came from. It was really like, okay, but how do I feel when I'm looking at these photos of myself? How do I feel in this? Did I feel in this moment? That is more relevant than how I think I look or how I think anyone else would think that I look. And really working with that idea every single day, that's the crux of my body acceptance, my body positivity, my body liberation. And I think it is a day-by-day journey.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better Together. When you know better, you get better. Our quote of the day, yoga is for everybody and everybody. You don't have to be thin and you don't have to be fat. You don't have to earn or have access to a certain amount of money. You don't have to embody anything other than your own truest and most honest self in order to practice yoga. And I think it's high time that someone shouted it loud enough so everyone can hear. That is from our guest today, Jessamyn Stanley. She is a celebrated yoga practitioner, body positive advocate, and she's going to tell us why yoga is for you and how we can learn to be how to love ourselves and our bodies a lot more. Get ready, Jeff Graham. Get ready to love yoga. Get ready to love your body. What did you call it the other day? Your dad bod, your COVID bod, your cabin bod?
Quarantine bod.
Quarantine
is the
bod.
one.
Quarantine
She's so
bod.
great. It's, I'm glad you brought it up though, Maria, because I think a lot of people consider body positivity to only be a female issue. And probably culturally, it tends to affect females more than it does men because women are, I think, treated more unfairly about their bodies than men are. But at the same time, it does affect men. And what I love is she talks about like, we can be grateful for our bodies. She's like, you don't need to wake up every day and be like, I'm obsessed with what I see in the mirror. That's impossible and no one operates that way. But what if instead you say, man, I'm awake and I'm on 2 feet and I've got these amazing legs that can carry me from point A to point B. And I have these lungs that let me breathe in air to oxygenate my brain. And like, that's a miracle. Like, that's a really beautiful way to look at our bodies. It's the beautiful machine that houses our soul.
So much better than the way most do, which there's so much mental violence around our bodies and our everything when we're in the mirror.
It's funny, Marie, when I think of your father at 76 or 70, however, 76 years old, and I think if he never lifted a weight in his life, he never ran, he never did all those things that, we see when we see people with the amazing bodies do all that stuff. But a lot of those people, just saying that, not that I'm not an advocate for physical fitness, I am, but I really do see the value of just yoga and movement, because when I think of all the guys that your dad's age, but that were like all buff when they're 30s and their 40s and 50s, all need new knees, new hips, shoulders. I mean, they're a mess. And they see your father like up and down ladders and, there really is just something to being what she's saying is waking up and feeling good and just being able to do things rather than, look in the mirror and go, wow, I look amazing. And your dad's taught me that. I'd rather be your dad and be able to move and feel good. And with yoga, Robert Parrish was an old Celtic who played till he was 44 years old. It was the record at the time. And I think Vince Carter, or no, not Vince Carter, some other player finally beat him, but really didn't play consistently. This guy played consistently through his 44th year. And by the way, this is like 30 years ago, but it's because he practiced yoga and Tai Chi. So he was limber and, and could move. So it's really amazing. Like I can't wait to talk to her. And I the older I get, the more I'm migrating away from pumping iron and thinking of all that stuff, because
better for your body. I know my mom she taught yoga for a long time, and she used to teach a class that was just like, it was older, it was for seniors, and it was really special. It's really cool. And I think that the more you just continue, it's movement, right? It's like you said, Kev, it's not pumping iron. It's not quote unquote exercise. It's movement. Your muscles and your joints just need to move. So it's like, if we can get away from this idea that it's like, oh, it's exercise. No, it's not. Yoga is. So I think.
And how you look too, get away from that.
Exactly.
Like, it's not like, I love what you said because I mean, I don't love what I see when I look in the mirror either half the time. But when I think of the fact that, I can just pop out of bed and I can still run and, and work a long day physically, that's really what it's about.
Well, I have tried yoga and I enjoyed it. I did it after surgery for a little while, maybe like a year after surgery, not like right after surgery. And I liked it being outside.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got cold and then it got hot. So there were only like small pockets where I could do it.
I could see you being obsessed with yoga.
I'm sure. But I also I feel like that's why I admire her so much, because she pushed through the tough part to get to it. I don't know if I've gotten there yet. I started getting close and then the weather was changing. But I think that you have to push through the hard part for anything to get to the other side, to get to the reward. And I never quite got there yet. I've always been more physical. I like more of that stuff.
But then you also, you have such a discipline for meditation and you love nature. I don't know. I feel like you need to keep at it. That's why it would be good to talk to Jessamyn, because maybe she can.
I mean, we tried. Remember years ago, we used to have somebody come to the house.
Yeah. I mean,
like 18 years ago.
Yeah. For me, it's
19 years ago.
Definitely more ADD than you. I get bored really fast.
Yeah, but I do like the stretching. That's what I like about it. I like the stretching.
Me too.
And
yes, me too.
But it is an intimidating thing when you see people doing all these incredible things with their bodies, and you never think you're going to quite get there. So that's
what Jessamyn, I think, is so great, because who better than her to help us through if we're insecure about not being able to do it? That's her whole point.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. I love it. I think one more thing to think about is her whole thing is think about yourself while you're doing yoga. It's an introspective practice. So if you go to a yoga class and you're thinking about, I look so dumb, everyone else is better than me. The whole point of yoga is to go inside yourself and to connect with your own self. And she speaks so much better about it than I do. So maybe we should move on to the interview. But I think that's a huge thing to think about as you're pursuing the yoga journey is do it for you. Don't do it for anyone else.
Well, and I think too, the thing with yoga is it is, Jeff, you just nailed it on the head. And so when you start yoga, because I know I was like this when I started, it's really hard. It's hard to be with yourself. It's hard to be quiet. It's when something's hard, it is.
It's hard to be quiet. No, she loves talking, so it is. It's hard for her to be quiet.
The better note, Kels, and
that was funny.
Is hard. Let me for finish. A lot of people.
She loves to chat.
But also it's hard. It is hard for a lot of people to be with themselves.
Right, but that's what I mean. It's you're in this room doing this kind of this foreign movement, right? And if you aren't good at it, you don't want to keep doing it. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to her, to be honest, because it really is such a soulful practice. Yoga. I don't know. I'm very excited.
All right, guys, let's get to our interview with Jessamyn. Jessamyn Stanley is one of the world's foremost thought leaders in the yoga space. She's amassed a huge following by focusing on the inclusivity and spiritually grounding principles on which the practice was initially founded. Her classes provide a body-positive approach to yoga, which celebrates students' bodies and encourages them to ask, how do I feel, rather than how do I look, which I love when practicing yoga. She's here to give us a yoga and body positivity crash course today. Jessamyn, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Maria. I'm so glad to be here.
I love your red glasses.
Thank you. Honestly, age happens, and I'm just adapting to the reality that I need to be able to use these in order to see. And the ironic thing is that when I was a kid, I lied on my eye exam test so that I could get glasses. And I feel like this is my punishment now.
Oh, that's so funny. I wonder, I remember there was a moment where it wasn't cool to have glasses, and then it was cool to have glasses.
Right. I think, okay, so for me, I'm pretty sure it happened around the time that Harry Potter started to be popular.
Oh,
and
there
it
you
was
go.
okay, glasses are cool. And that was when I was like, I need this. And at the time, my eyes were like, you're good. And now it's like, yeah, you thought that was funny. It's a real thing now.
Now you're like, damn, I really need this stuff.
Literally.
So talk about your journey to where you are now with yoga. I think it's really fascinating because you kind of had a similar experience, I think, that we all have. You kind of try and you're like, oh shit, what's this stuff? What is this?
Exactly. So, well, what happened was my aunt was obsessed with yoga when I was in high school. She went through this period of being obsessed with Bikram yoga. And she was like, Jessamyn, come to yoga class with me. And I was like, I am not doing that, but I mean, I've kind of been spending all summer just sitting on the couch, so I'll just go to this class one time with you. It's not that big of a deal. And I just remember walking in, and it's like so Bikram yoga, hot yoga, the room is heated to somewhere between 100 to 104 degrees. So my strongest memory initially was just that not only was it insufferably hot, but it also just smelled really bad because there's all this carpeting that has soaked up like gallons of sweat. So I was just like, this is really unpleasant. And then immediately I was sweating from places that honestly, I didn't even know that human beings sweat from. Like I was sweating in my eyebrows and on the tops of my fingers. And this is before anything actually happened. This is just walking into the room. So I was like, I got to be in here for an hour and a half. And I think I'm being generous to say that I made it a third of the way through the class before I was like, I need to leave. I cannot be here anymore. And they tell you not to walk out of a hot yoga class, but I was like, these people don't know me. I've got to get out of here. I can't do this. And I walked out. And when I got out, I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. But there's air conditioning here. What was the problem? So I go back in and I learned a really important lesson about why you shouldn't walk out of a hot yoga class like that, because the temperature shift in your physical body can be really intense and it can create a lot of negative responses. And for me, it made me extremely nauseous. And I walked out of the room and I was like, I am never doing this again. I just waited for my aunt in the lobby. I was like, I remember distinctly telling her afterwards, I'm never doing this again. And ironically, so some years later, I was in graduate school and a really good friend of mine, she knew that I was going through a really tough time. I go into more detail about this in my book, Everybody Yoga, but honestly, I think that if you've been 23, then you understand what I was going through. I was just like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what's going on in my life. And my friend she had drunk the Bikram yoga Kool-Aid and she was like, no, you should come to yoga. You're going to love it. And so it's the exact same style of yoga that I tried before. And I was like, I'm not doing that shit. I already know it's not for me. Like, I'm really not doing it. But she got me caught up on a Groupon. She was like, what's the worst that could happen? You go one time, you pay for this Groupon, you don't ever have to go again. And I went. And the thing about Bikram yoga specifically, I think of it as like the McDonald's of yoga because it is literally exactly the same no matter where you go. It's always the same sequence. So nothing had changed. It was still hot as hell, hard as hell. Everything about it seemed impossible to me. But what I didn't realize in my day-to-day life, so much of my unhappiness and my depression was really coming from the fact that I created all these boundaries for myself. I really decided the kind of person that I am. I said, here are my walls. Here's what I'm capable of doing. Here's what I'm capable of believing about myself. And I am not going to step outside of those walls. And in yoga, in any style of yoga, whether it's literally any style of yoga, it doesn't matter. It requires that you step outside of yourself. That is the step outside of your boundaries. And for me, it really happened in those physical postures, understanding that, even though I might not be able to practice this posture the way that everyone else in the room can, the teacher is going to see that. She's going to know that I don't know what I'm doing. And, I'm not wearing the same clothes as everyone else. I was always like the fattest person in the room, frequently the only Black person in the room. It was a very alienating experience for me. But even in that environment, I would challenge myself to just try. Just try. Maybe you fall down. Maybe everyone sees this about you. Maybe the worst thing happens. And maybe you can still just try. And that idea of just try, that was like transformational for me. It was something, it extended far beyond a yoga mat and far beyond anything that I was doing in that class. And ultimately, that feeling is why I keep coming back to yoga after all these years.
So you're addicted.
Oh yeah, totally addicted, like 100%, and in love with, but it's also really come down to the fact that yoga is so much more than that physical practice that I first came to it seeking. Like, and that's something that I really didn't understand in the beginning. Like, when I first started practicing, I really thought that ultimately, like, I would go to yoga class like every so often, and then I practice at home, and it was like, oh, this makes my body feel good, and I didn't feel comfortable exploring beyond that point. I was like, honestly, unclear on the cultural appropriation. I was not sure. Like, I was like, should I even be practicing this? Is this appropriate? And I didn't have an interest in seeking beyond what I was being sold, and it's really, over time, become very clear to me that everything that I seek on a yoga mat is what I'm seeking in the other parts of my life as well. Whoa. And ultimately, the practice that we do in the postures is just preparation for the yoga of everyday life, that finding that balance, that grounding, that strengthening, flexibility, open-heartedness, seeking all of that in life's toughest moments.
Whoa. I'm just so blown away at how you started and then where you've gone, because you're articulating something that I don't know if ever, did something happen?
No,
she went me too.
Seriously, me too.
Oh, I'm like, wait, what happened? Why is Kelsey laughing randomly in the booth? The way you're articulating it is like, what a guru would probably say, but you're the every girl. You're the every girl that went on this journey. And so I wonder where do you think you were feeling that there was cultural appropriation?
Yeah, I wanted to hear that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, there's a part of me that like wants to dig all the way in this. And then there's another part of me that wants to say, I have a book coming out this summer called Yoke, My Yoga of Self-Acceptance. And I go into this in much more detail because I do think that cultural appropriation or fear of cultural appropriation is one of the big reasons that people don't approach yoga at all, because there's a feeling of like, I don't know, is this something that is appropriate for me to be practicing? And what I found about yoga is that what yoga actually means, to yoke, to bring together the light and the dark of life, the good and the bad, that has nothing to do with culture. Ultimately, that is something that transcends culture. Culture is temporal. This concept is something that, like, yoga has existed for thousands of years because of that, because it can just always adapt to any person, any identity, whatever. But because American yoga, which I think of American yoga as being any practice of yoga that really originated in the late 19th century, early 20th century in the United States, American yoga is very much based in colonization, colonialism, xenophobia, racism, all of the things that are coming to a head in our society. That is the soil that American yoga was sown in. And so much of American yoga ends up being, whether intentional or unintentional, it ends up being culturally appropriative. And it's really hard to engage with, even when, there's just so many different sides of this, and everyone has a different perspective. And I think that all of the confusion of that, I was just like, no, I'm just gonna do these yoga poses because I think that's probably okay, and I'm in it for the exercise, and that's plenty. But the actual spirituality, the spirituality, the oneness of the universe, all of that is something that has nothing to do ultimately with any specific cultural identity. And I think that the more that you just lean into that truth, that yoking, seeking this balance, the more that you lean into that, the more that yoga actually leads you back to your own cultural identity and leads you to true acceptance of self. But that it requires stepping beyond that soil of colonization and the really negative, sad shit that has perfumed American yoga for so long.
Wow. I can't wait to read your book. You have such a great way with words.
Oh man,
the way it's perfumed,
so
like holy wow.
What I'll say is that my first book, Everybody Yoga, Let Go of Fear, Get on the Mat, Love Your Body, that is about how do you just start a yoga practice from where you are right now. Like anyone can pick up that book and be like, flip through the pages. I don't even think you actually really need to read it. You can just like flip through and be like, yeah, pretty much got this. I think I could get on a yoga mat and practice downward facing dog, warrior one pose, whatever. And I'm like, now that book is out in the world, I'm like, okay, great. So now that you've started your yoga practice, there's probably a lot of emotions that are coming up for you now, a lot of things that you didn't expect to come up. Now let's talk about all of that. So yoga is about accepting racial identity, accepting sexual trauma, accepting greed, capitalist envy, accepting cultural appropriation, all of these things that really are the basis of the yoga practice, but that they get covered up by this whole yoga is exercise thing.
Yeah. Wow. When I was reading that Bikram was the yoga that you started with. Now, I don't know 100%. Is that what you're still doing?
No. I'm so glad that this has come up.
Okay, because I saw the documentary and I wanted to ask your opinion on it, because when I started working with a yogi, his name is Yogi Cameron, and he was like, oh, that Bikram stuff, that's just all these people creating new things to make money. And he's like, yoga's not supposed to be in the heat. It's just not. Now, I respect somebody who started in that and then found their love for it and stays with it. Like, I'm not here to judge what people are doing or whatever, but I did want your take on Bikram yoga after all that, came out with the documentary.
So much to say. I feel like the first thing that I would say, there are so many, that documentary is dope. ESPN did an excellent podcast documentary about it. Also, their 30 for 30 podcast is so good. And just seriously, shout out to the journalists who have been shining a light on the fact that this is something that does not just happen it didn't just happen in Bikram yoga. It's happened in so many different lineages of yoga, not just American yoga either. And I think that, whatever, I'm not going to go. I'm like, Jessamyn, be specific, walk down the road. Okay, so I came to Bikram very much in the way that I think a lot of people do. It's just like, whatever yoga is most accessible in your area. And I live in North Carolina. I'm born and raised here. And at the time that my aunt was really into it, there were just not that many types of yoga in North Carolina, honestly. So different from, I don't know, it seems like you guys are maybe in Cali or in New York. Like,
we're in Los Angeles.
So different there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's just so many different options and lineages represented, but a lot of people are just introduced to it through whatever the mechanism is. And I think that ultimately, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you start with. It doesn't really matter the type of yoga that you practice, because it's all the same. Like all lineages are kind of the same. And I do think I hear arguments about like, yoga's not supposed to be practiced in certain environments. Like maybe it's not supposed to be a hot environment or a wet environment or a goat-filled environment, a horse environment. There's so many different types of yoga.
Oh yeah, goat yoga. Now. I want to do goat yoga just to hang out with the goats.
No, right. I'm like, I look at goat yoga, I'm like, that looks very cute. I see what y'all are doing here. I don't know if I necessarily need to go, but it looks very fun. But I'm like, so there's always going to be everyone arguing about like the purity of the practice, which that's not really my game. My thing is mostly like, what is the integrity of this lineage, and what are the human beings that are involved, and what are they putting out spiritually into the world? And I think that there's a lot of harm and a lot of sadness and there's a lot of sadness that has come through that lineage. And it's really honestly to the point where like I would want to emotionally hold space, just holding for anyone who's even tangentially related to that pain. It is very, very hard. But simultaneously, I would say that the practice itself, the actual postures, like Bikram Choudhury does not own that practice. Like, he didn't create these ideas. He didn't create the postures. He didn't. So that I think really, if you are able to live your own practice and not be following the ideology of a flawed ideology. And this is really the reason why it is so problematic to follow people as opposed to following the teacher that's inside of you. Because I think that ultimately every teacher is just leading you back to that teacher that's inside of you. But we get excited about people and want to do what they do, but everybody is human. Everybody is flawed. And I just am like, personally have stepped away from that practice. It is not something that I personally practice, but I do understand why other people do. And I think there's a lot that can happen to build up a yoga practice, a personal yoga practice.
Yeah. I wonder, Jessamyn, how did your journey to body positivity with yourself start? Were you always accepting of your body? Did you always love your body? And then how did you get there?
Oh, man.
Because it's a problem for people of all sizes. I have the skinniest friends who spend their entire days and their entire lives being like, I'm so fat. I'm so fat. I'm like, shut up. You're wasting your whole life hating on something that it just makes no sense to me.
It is so intense, the ways in which we are taught to hate ourselves fundamentally. And I don't even think it has anything to do with size. I would probably blame it chiefly on capitalism, because I do think that capitalism works at its best when we believe that there's fundamentally something wrong with us that we need to change, because then we'll buy something.
Exactly.
So I think that
great way to put it.
Everyone is kind of, like, and it's totally impersonal ultimately. Like, capitalism doesn't mean no harm. Capitalism's just like, I want you to buy what I'm telling you to buy. So, but the end result is that everybody feels like they're not good enough, and I've actually said, sometimes I think that the people who feel the most body shame are the people who see themselves represented in the mainstream, because they actually are looking at these images and thinking like, I should look like this. This is what my life should be like. And it's not like this. And so I'm not good enough. I, on the other hand, have never seen myself represented really, truly. Like, it's only in the last 5 or 10 years that I'm like, wow, there are fat Black queer femmes out here being shown on TV. This is great. A little bit more than there were. So, but that is like a brand new thing ultimately. And I spent my whole life not seeing myself represented. And so as a result, I developed a lot of self-hate, a lot of shame, especially because I was really coming of age during the Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Olsen twins kind of era. It was all thin features, small lips, small body. And I am literally the complete opposite of that in every way. And so I definitely felt a lot of shame just for the way that I am at a fundamental level. And it wasn't until I was in college that I started to read the work of a lot of fat acceptance writers like Marianne Kirby, Leslie Kinzel. The two of them were huge for me. Virgie Tovar, Jess Baker, and they all really emphasized the importance of just speaking truth to power, accepting the word fat. It's something that has always been used as a form of profanity. It's weaponized against fat people. And so reclaiming that word for myself and owning it and really learning to love it. And all of that was happening around the time and or before I started practicing yoga. Then when I started practicing yoga and I started practicing at home, I wanted to document my journey, because this was around the time that Instagram first came out. And there were some yoga people who were on Instagram, and they were all just trying to create community through home practice, because home practice can be very isolating. So I would just be, taking photos of myself. And while I would take these photos, I would in the moment of the photo, I would be like, oh my God, yoga's amazing. I feel so great, blah, blah, blah. And then I would go and look at the photo and I would just immediately start talking cash shit about myself. I'd be like, look at my stomach. Oh, I'm so gross. Look at my chins, blah, blah, blah. Just like going on and on. And it was a really long time before I started to notice no one else is saying these things about me. Like we always want to point the finger at the media, family, friends, loved ones, whoever, like point the finger at somebody else for why we say or think negative things about ourselves. But when I was taking those photos and saying those things about myself, I was the one doing that. And it's something that I just had to own. And I would think like, is this really how I feel about myself? Do I really think that I'm this unworthy? And if I do, I need to accept that now. But if I don't, let's try to see what the root of that is. And that was really like the turning point for my journey of body liberation, body acceptance. Because ultimately, like, as much as I would say that I am body positive, I do think that there's a bigger thing that's kind of happening where it's like, I'm really trying to free my body, free my form from this relationship with capitalism, this really binding dynamic where it's like, I have to turn to the outside world to decide how I'm going to feel about myself. Instead, I want to be able to look within myself and say, that's where how do I look versus how do I feel came from. It was really like, okay, but how do I feel when I'm looking at these photos of myself? How do I feel in this? Did I feel in this moment? That is more relevant than how I think I look or how I think anyone else would think that I look. And really working with that idea every single day, that's the crux of my body acceptance, my body positivity, my body liberation. And I think it is a day by day journey. And some days are good and some days are not good. And the days that are good, I think are less important than the days that are not good, because the days that are not good are really showing me who I truly am. And I think that it's something that I'm going to be working on my entire life. Like, I think that learning to body shame myself was one of the first things that I learned, like right out the gate. And so like an alcoholic is in recovery forever, I'm in recovery forever. I'm just always on this journey and I start over every day where I left off, and that's good enough for me.
Wow. 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 Kevin's taking feverish notes over there.
It's so helpful. And I love you. I love your journey. And as a 54-year-old male, it's like so just enlightening and refreshing and educational. And I want to do yoga now.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just so much. Like we are taught to hate ourselves. We are definitely taught. I am the. And we joke about it. I'm the consumer in the house. I'm a huge consumer. But you're right. We're just like mice that just go to the cheese. You know what I mean? Like we're all just power pellets, but more and more and more. And and you're right. And this is the darker side of that way of life that in the 21st century, we just really have got to like migrate away from. And like
all the external and go internal.
Yeah. And there's just going to be a new form. There just has to be a new form that rises from it. And I haven't figured it out, but man, you're getting there.
I just like what I like the awakening that yoga led you to. And I think that we're all looking for those other answers about ourselves, about our relationship with the external world. And I think that, obviously, and I was saying this at the beginning of the show, like anything, whether you're trying a new sport, learning a new instrument, trying to lose weight, whatever it is, that initial period of pain and suffering, if you don't go through it, you can't get the reward. So you went through it and you got the reward. I've gone through it, and then just as maybe the reward was coming, I dipped out. So I haven't stuck with it enough to get what I know I would probably just die for from yoga.
Do you know one thing about that, though? I always feel like we always get exactly what we need, no matter what. Like that, it's even if it's not what we think we're going to get, or even if it's not what we get later, what we got at the time was exactly what we needed. And so I would be like, I feel like whatever you did then got you to now. And then that now is where the journey continues. And that there is so much to be gleaned from even experiences where it's like, because I think a lot of my classes, so my yoga studio, the Underbelly, we really cater to new practitioners who have never practiced yoga before and who have felt like they are not allowed in the yoga world at all. And so there are a lot of people who their very first yoga class, they practice maybe a posture, maybe two postures out of a class that's like 30-ish minutes long. And I think that what the traditional yoga ideology would have, the traditional American yoga posture obsessed ideology would have you think is that, well, if you kept up with the rest of the class, or if you, go to class every single day and do exactly what the teacher says, then you'll get the benefits. And if you don't, then you won't. But I feel like maybe what you needed to do was watch the class. Maybe you needed to just have the experience of being and listening. That is a whole piece of the puzzle, and feeling your feelings. And maybe corpse pose or child's pose or whatever posture felt accessible, maybe that was plenty for today. And then tomorrow, maybe you add on, maybe then it's cat-cow pose. Maybe then you're adding a twist at the end, because maybe it takes a month, maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes a decade or more, but you're always on this journey to something else. And I think that if you just let it be about the journey and not about a destination, then every part of it is great. Everything is needed.
That's just the message for life in general.
Yeah.
Let it be about the journey, not the destination.
Right.
If you're so obsessed with the destination, you're not living the journey. You're not learning the lessons along the way.
Exactly. Literally, exactly.
And what's cool is that, it doesn't seem like the investment in this is as drastic as other things you need to invest in to get something better in your life. It just seems more patience than it is like what is required of other things. And what I love is, Jessamyn, like you had your breakthrough, but I think for someone else, for Maria, for myself, Kelsey, Jeff, our listeners, think of the other breakthroughs that they'll get for their lives. That's what I'm hearing. Like you got your breakthroughs.
Totally.
And I feel like there's so many other breakthroughs that could come from this.
Well, and you know what I love?
Endless breakthroughs.
Jessamyn, I was just saying, I bet you would agree with this. The thing about yoga, I mean, I grew up doing yoga, and for me it was like, we're a society that we're taught to not go slow. We're taught to go at 150,000 miles an hour. So it's really uncomfortable. It's really incredibly uncomfortable. And it's like, until you have that kind of breakthrough to the other side, that it's like, no, I'm going to give myself this hour. I'm actually going to be patient with myself. I'm going to be, kind,
patient
slow.
with myself. Yeah, because you can't get the poses always. And
exactly.
That's why I think you need patience.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Exactly. Really, this is reminding me of something that I've been reflecting on a lot these days through the pandemic, and really thinking about the cons, but then also some of the positive things that the universe has been asking of us collectively. And I felt that the universe was literally like, you need to slow down. Everyone needs to slow down. Yes. Just take it in half time if you can. And I think that you practice doing that. You practice doing it on the mats. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be, literally, it doesn't even need to be on a yoga mat. Like this practice of just trying to accept all the incoming forces, I think that it is so much more applicable in those moments. Like when you get caught off in traffic, or when these are like relatively little things, but like when you're having to deal with genuine trauma, huge shifts in life, having to deal with death, having to deal with huge cataclysmic shifts, just being able to say, like, I'm just going to slow it down. I'm going to take in every piece of this. I'm going to let myself feel every piece of it. Because that's another part, is that I think that we're so obsessed with feeling good, we don't let ourselves feel bad. It's to your point earlier, Maria, this idea of feeling like not experiencing the hard part and then therefore not getting the benefits. I feel like there is so much power in standing in that fire, really letting the fire envelop you and just letting it's hot. You are ashen, because from the ashes, the phoenix always rises, but you have to let yourself feel it all. And we're being asked to do a lot of things on an individual level and on a societal level. And I think that this is really a part of all of that.
Yeah. And I think we all have to accept and be okay with the fact that pain can be our greatest teacher.
Exactly. It is, in so many ways, I think it is the only teacher. It's the thing that really, and it comes out of nowhere. And you always think like, I cannot handle this. I cannot handle this. Is too much, too far, too much. And it's like the universe never deals anything that you cannot handle. Everything is custom order, made for you. Whatever fresh hell you found yourself in, it was made directly for you from the universe.
Oh, perfect.
Uplifting.
I'm so excited for my personal hell, Jessamyn. Your timing is impeccable, as I am having a very challenging day.
But I agree with you, Jessamyn.
But you're right.
But
you're right. You're so right. Why don't we close out on, I want to show some of these beautiful images of you. And I want you to tell me with some of these, how long did it take you to get to that place where you could do this? Like,
okay, let's see. Let me think about it.
How much trial and error, how much suffering, how much did you want to quit? How much was it like, I can't do this. This is never going to happen.
I think probably at least somewhere between 3 and 5 years. What I will say about this.
Whoa, wait, Jessamyn, that's a lot more patience than I have. 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, 3 to 5 years of regular practice.
Lord.
I would say there was a time in my life where I was practicing several hours every single day. So there was a time where but I will say that time was not the time when I actually was able to practice these postures. So much of it is about, it's strengthening. Yes, it's core strengthening. It's hamstring flexibility. It's, those are probably the two biggest things that I think make the difference physically. But even once you have that, there is this fear of falling that is so big, and that I think is really the biggest obstacle to get over. And it is not a physical challenge. It's an emotional, mental challenge. And for me, like I'm afraid to fly. I have a fear of heights. Like there's this whole thing about ups and downs that makes me anxious naturally. But in addition to that, what I really found that working on any sort of headstand variation has revealed for me is a fear of failure, a fear of not being good enough, a fear of what's going to happen when I can't do it. And so when I would practice this posture, because I'm pretty sure when I started practicing yoga at home, headstand was like the first posture that I ran to. And I literally went to the wall and just started trying to kick up. And so I was able to practice it pretty easily at the wall for a while. But practicing it by myself without anything behind me, that took really accepting the fear, that really just fear of myself, ultimately, fear of what I am, what I can be, what it will mean to not be good enough. And only in accepting that am I able to practice that posture. And really the full split aspect, that is a lot of hip opening, which hip opening I always equate to emotional release, because we hold so much tension in our pelvis and that hip region. And when you start opening your hips, it feels like pain immediately, because it's just like, it's a lot. And it's because it's all the emotions that you're not releasing throughout the day that just over time calcify and create so much sensation. And so I sit I'm a double Cancer. I sit in hip openers a lot and I just let myself cry. And that's just, it's okay for me. I think for other astrological signs, it might not feel as okay to just cry, but that's how I spend a lot of my time. And so that's what makes the hip opening aspect there. But yeah, I mean, I think that accepting the journey means accepting that 3 to 5 years is not really that long in the grand scheme of things. I think it's a pretty quick period of time, but
did it help
at the
you
time,
get over,
it felt like a long time.
But did it help you get over your fear of flying or any of your big fears?
You know, I think what I still have a lot of feelings about flying. What has allowed me to move beyond that is really it's just accepting. Well, no, I guess it's really that I just try to accept the worst, whatever the worst thing is that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like the worst, everybody knows the worst thing that could happen when you fly. And so the worst thing that could happen when you are in a headstand is that you fall.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you fall, just let yourself fall naturally and don't try to like course correct your way out of it. It's always safe to fall. And I had to remind myself of this very recently because I'm an Adidas ambassador and we were shooting on the edge of this cliff. I mean, I'm telling you, dude, they had me headstanding, like right.
It was totally on a cliff.
I was like right on the edge of this cliff. And just a few, like right before the holidays, I was having to remind myself that like, Jessamyn, it's okay to fall. You're good. Everything's fine. So it's something that you have to think about literally every time you get into the posture.
Wow. Well, I sit here with the tightest, most in-pained hips, and I've been going through an emotional journey that's only getting more and more emotional. And so I'm now realizing because of this interview that you were perfectly timed for today for me.
A lot of women, I hear that from too, Maria.
To do some hip openers.
Oh,
Kelsey,
yeah.
You'll have to help me send me a few that you think will be good for me.
Because I'm right there with you.
Yes.
And Jessamyn, I have to say, I'm your Pisces crying sister. So I sit in my pigeon and I sob. I'm right there with you, sister.
Okay. I like that. And the thing is, we're going to send y'all some classes from the underbelly because we know about hips. We like to cry. We encourage that. And I
produce my cries, Jessamyn.
Just letting it be there.
I have to produce my cries.
Yeah.
So like I had a moment last night, like a pretty awful moment. I was like, yeah, I can't cry right now. So I'm going to have to schedule that in. And Kelsey keeps saying, well, let me give you a hug. I'm like, stay away. Stay away. I am not able to cry yet, so don't touch me because I will go there and I will lose my shit and I will be completely impossible for a while.
You got to get the show done. And
I'm like, I got to get the show done. I have to get things. So I'm a cry producer in life, Jessamyn. So
I wish that I could tell you how much I identify with this. Like, I think it's just really, I think that everybody feels this way, but it's just whether or not you let yourself actually do it. So like, I'm the type of person who's just like, okay, I'm just going to have to cry. And that's a relatively new thing. Cause for years I was like, I can't cry. I mean, and also like I grew up in the kind of family where you don't just cry. That's not appropriate. We're not doing that. So it was definitely it's something that I've had to accept over time. But I think that pretty much everybody is like, and I mean, it's hard, you have to support so much. You have to carry so much. Like you can't just be falling apart all the time.
Yeah. Well, because when you let yourself go,
when you let yourself have it and just feel it, you're so much stronger on the other side.
Yeah. Well, I told Kevin this morning, I said, so you realize like I'm going to have to let all this out at some point. And so I know it can't be right now because there are just things that I have to deal with first before I let myself go there. So I was like, just don't think that time left. Like it's coming. It's coming. You're like, winter's coming.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Winter is coming.
Like I remember I was on a book tour and I was dealing with, a battery of abuse from bosses. And I remember I was on a book tour and I was like, I can't. If I let it out, guys, it's going to be a long, long cry. And so I held it in. I was like, okay, I'm going to Bora Bora on this date. That's when I'm going to cry. And so we get to Bora Bora. We get on one of those paddle boats. We go out into the ocean, me and Kevin.
By the way, what? Okay, back up, Jessamyn. We hadn't been on vacation in 15 years, so like we saved for this. Like we were so excited.
Yeah, and I go out to the middle of the water. And I guttural cry for hours. Kevin still looks back on this trip as the worst trip ever. He's like horrified. And I'm like,
I don't see it's the worst trip ever.
I had to let it out, but it was like a guttural cry for hours.
That is such a blessing. And what a beautiful place to do it.
This is
true.
You
can really just like let it out and let it go. And Kevin, I am sorry. I know that was a lot to have to feel from the outside.
Well, I will say as a man, I felt emasculated because I was mad at the people who put her there and that, I couldn't do, what we're trained as men to do, like go kick ass and protect our loved ones. And you sit there and you're helpless. And like I said to you this morning, Maria, like, and Jessamyn, I was saying to her is like, why I get really, it really hurts me to see her cry because I can't do anything. It's different when she's like, "Oh my God, this house is falling apart," and I go, "I'll fix it." Or if she's like, totally. I can't get, I can't get to this appointment time. No, Maria, I'll go do it. Like, but when you can't do anything, you just feel like, again, like I feel powerless, and I hate that feeling.
Exactly. Kevin, are you an Aries?
I am a Scorpio.
Scorpio.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. That is interesting. I'm gonna need to see that whole natal chart. We're gonna need to get a whole email chain going.
Yeah, we have to. Jessamyn, can I ask you another question, please?
Please.
So again, for our listeners and for me, I get like it took 3 to 5 years to get to that like pose but when did the emotional breakthroughs start to happen? Do I have to wait 3 to 5 years for those?
No, I think you need to wait 3 to 5 breaths, 3 to 5 seconds, maybe. It's coming immediately, and it'll come in ways that you can't schedule it or think that like, okay, this is the amount of emotional breakthrough that I would like to have on this day. It's always like the most like simple looking posture. It's always on a day when you're like, no, I've got it together. Everything's great. I'm totally fine. And it's like, the teacher will say one sentence that is just like all of a sudden triggering things that you didn't even realize you needed to let go of. And it can come up in so many different ways. One of the questions that we get at the underbelly quite often is like, what do I do when the postures make me mad? What do I do whenever I get angry when I'm practicing yoga? Because there's such a belief that you shouldn't ever be angry, that being angry is bad. And I'm always like, that's dope. Like, get angry, want to fight, get that feeling out, let it be out. It's the reason that it's coming out like this is because it's just trapped underneath the surface. But I think that anytime, it's like a myofascial release, actually. It's like just that little bit of something on the top breaks down all this stuff underneath. So I did not wait 3 to 5 years for the breakthroughs to start, I don't even know if they're breakthroughs so much as they're breakdowns, and then I just kind of sweep up the mess and then go on with my life.
I love it.
That's good to know. That just makes it even more aspirational.
Yeah, I think Kevin's sitting here thinking like, okay, how long till he's like trying to figure it out for himself. But Jessamyn, you are an absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation. And I love what you're doing. And I love that you've inspired my husband to actually do this. Yeah. And I am re-inspired to re-tackle it all, especially in this moment when I need to open these hips up because they are hurting so bad that I'm literally for the last 2 months, I've been massaging them. And
I believe it.
And I had like a hernia there years ago that I healed, and I can feel it popping again because I'm massaging so deeply in there.
Oh, I feel you. I don't want to get too far off, but my partner, I guess it's been almost 2 years ago, she was diagnosed with a herniated disc, and that she is through yoga really changed so much of her mobility, and to the point where she's like, did something happen there? I forgot that something happened. But I'm always like, you just have to be really vigilant with it, because if you don't for a period of time, then exactly what you're talking about happens. So you're like, you start trying to work into it, and then you're just like, what the fuck, man? Like, this is not like, I'm almost worse than before. So I feel what you're saying. And I'm sending so many blessings to you for that. And so grateful to have been here with you.
We're sending it back to you.
Kelsey, you have my sheet with our where to find Jessamyn. So if you can share with everybody where you can find out more about her yoga practices and everything, that would be great.
I've got it on my end too. I'll just hop in right now. So of course, Jessamyn, and everything that we need to know about you can be found at your website, Jessamyn Stanley. You mentioned the Underbelly, which is so cool. It's your community that you've built with exclusive classes and services and a whole kind of family that you've built, which is incredible. And I will say, you very graciously sent us one of your exclusive Underbelly videos. And for our Patreon community, we will be airing that for you. So if you haven't joined Patreon yet and you want to get your second dose of Jessamyn, which who wouldn't after this incredible interview, make sure you join now because that's dropping on Saturday. And then Jessamyn, your book, Everybody Yoga, can be found wherever books are sold. And I'm so stoked to hear you're coming out with a new book.
Oh my God, I'm so excited about Yoke, my yoga of self-acceptance. It'll be out this June, 2021. It's going to be sold everywhere the books are available.
Amazing. You rock.
Jessamyn, have an amazing day. Truly. Thank you so much.
You too. Have a good day.
And Jessamyn, stay in touch. Yeah, please stay in touch with us.
Honestly. Sure.
And if you need, listen, you need help on the Hollywood end, that's when you flash the bat signal. That's where I come in.
Executive producer elect.
I will be in touch.
That's where you DM me.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Later, y'all.
Thank you. Oh, that was great.
Wow.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's amazing.
She's awesome.
What? I mean, God, the way she speaks and articulates everything, and she has such a great way with words. That line where she used perfumed, I was like, wait, drop the freaking mic.
Well, when she said pain, you said pain can be the greatest teacher, and she said, or the only teacher.
Yeah.
Oof.
Guys, I'm shaking so bad. I'm not like, okay.
Okay.
Let's get out of here.
But that was beautiful.
Yeah, you did great.
And like, are we recording still? Because we could, because I thought so much to offer, and I'm definitely going to take some baby steps into this, and I feel like, I mean, who wouldn't want things to open up and come out of your life and have all those, look at all those breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Kelsey's going to send me some hip yoga poses.
That's right.
Thank you guys for joining us as always. In the meantime, you can follow us at Better Together with Maria. Kelsey, you have my sheet. But
my name is Jessamyn. At Jeffrey Craig Graham, at Kelsmeyer 2, at Undergaro.
No, forget out Undergaro.
And remember, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.